Welcome to Financially Savvy in 20 Minutes, a podcast hosted by me, Natalie Torres-Haddad, an international award-winning author, two-time TEDx speaker, and investor, along with Vera Egley, an investor, sales and marketing pro, and multi-language podcaster. We will share the tips and tricks from interviews with self-made entrepreneurs, leaders, and those who have attained financial freedom while learning financial literacy in multiple languages. Hello. Welcome to Financially Savvy in 20 Minutes. I'm Natalie Torres-Haddad here with Vera Egley. Hello. And let's just get right into it. You and I have been talking about the choices that we make as women, really men, anyone in a relationship, whether to have family or not family. And if you're single as well, these are conversations you should have, especially as we see people taking longer in their lives to decide whether they want to have children, and obviously the cost that comes behind before, during, and after, especially if you're dealing with infertility issues or what that comes as set. And I think you and I are perfect to talk about this. Obviously, we're not doctors and we're just basing on experience and some research that we've done and from friends that are going through it. But you and I have had this conversation many times as women that are in their careers. We talk about what our choices are. And maybe you want to talk a little bit about what your choice has been and what has come along with that, and also maybe even the cost that comes with that.
Yeah. So, my husband and I decided not to have children, which is, it's strange because, um, it's almost like it's expected. Everyone's just like, how can you guys not have children? A lot of the conversations that come up are like, oh, you guys should definitely have kids. You'd be the best parents. And even though the person is not at all trying to be rude or invasive, it comes from a place of judgment because you're also assuming that we would be great parents and that we can have children, and nobody ever asks. They just straight up ask, why don't you want to have kids? Look, we could have children if we wanted to, fortunately, but we're choosing not to. However, when you just ask that question, you don't know what the person's going through. What if like one of us is, whatever is going on in the livelihood of two individuals that have chosen to spend their life together and have or not have kids? You don't know unless you're somebody who we've shared that with. And I feel like the questions, even though there's no malice behind it, it's very judgmental, it's very invasive, and we need to be kinder and more aware of what that question can trigger for some people. um my husband's ex-girlfriend, actually, he told me once when they asked her, why can't you have kids, she straight up said, well, has it ever occurred to you that maybe I can't? And the person was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have asked that. It's like, don't ever want to be placed or put in that position where I have to tell somebody or answer that way, and I wouldn't. But I think it's just a lack of awareness for other people. And what it has done for us is, I just like, oh, Natalie, we believe in like hardcore unconditional love. Like, I have the love to give and guide my nieces, my friends' kids. Like, I want to be whatever parent, aunt, cool friend I can to those kids. And I'm happy to do it, And I mean, we choose also to spend our money other ways. It's not that it's any cheaper, our lifestyle, than, just because we don't have kids. I mean, it's not the same, but when you have fur babies, they're also expensive. Expenses come with that. We also budget for those things. And yes, we get to travel and pick up and go a lot more. But it's what we've chosen for our lives. So we make financial budgets for that, and we make decisions based on that. I don't believe that there's one better way or the other. It's just what is right for you in whatever kind of coupledom you're in. Right. So,
Oh, I agree. And you just said it. It's the choices that we make. Doesn't always mean that they're easier. It's just it's a right to be able to choose, right? And sometimes, like you said, there's some women that don't have that choice either. And for me, obviously, because the fertility issues that we've been going through, it's the lack of education that, one, it's a taboo subject for many people to still talk about. Not just culturally, it's just in our society and especially our healthcare system, the way it is set up, where most insurances don't cover any type of infertility
procedures. So there's so many out there. A lot of people don't understand that people are most used to hearing the word IVF, which is a lot more common nowadays as it was to me posted like 20, 30 years ago. And IUI is another form of insemination, right? So it's less invasive, usually way less expensive. But there's also so many factors and requirements that you have to meet in order to be a candidate for IUI. So
Mhm.
um, I wanted to talk about this during this episode because it's the financial side that has an effect, right? We talk about our finances being connected to our emotional state. So, as parents to be, people, you try everything, you try to save money to say, you don't necessarily start to think of like, oh, I need to save money in case I can't conceive.
Right.
And that can be very expensive when it comes to the type of medications that you have to pay first, maybe some out of pocket, even your insurance covers some of it. Also the numerous doctor's appointments, and hopefully you go to more than one because you want to get hopefully a second opinion. You want to meet with the right specialist because every woman and every man is different when it comes to their fertility issues. And with the IUI, we've seen it was the cheaper route, and because my egg works, the sperm works, it was just an easier, less expensive way to go around. It doesn't guarantee it'll work. And the percentage with IVF is technically much higher than an IUI, but that is also a lot more invasive and a lot more expensive, right? So
Mhm.
I have many friends and family members that, excuse me, mostly friends, and I had some family members that have gone through IVF. And what the biggest concern is, they say, well, the expenses are not only the medication, but the expenses of freezing your eggs. And I
Mhm.
had to read with you because before we even had this conversation, I'm like, oh, what we wanted to talk about was, I got a text and emails from different people all the time. And this one was like egg freezing specials. And most people don't know that when you freeze your eggs, no matter what age you're doing it, 20, 30, 40, it doesn't necessarily guarantee your eggs will be okay once they thaw out. But you're also making a financial investment in that because it can range in the US from six to $10,000. That's just for freezing the eggs, not including the medication, the treatments that come along with once you decide to use, if you can use those eggs through IVF or IUI, right? And with IVF, man, it can range across the spectrum from ten to $30,000, and that's just for one round. And it's always so frustrating personally when I'm going through and seeing other women and couples that are going through fertility, is not only the amount of money we're spending, not just the doctor visits and everything that comes with that, but also there's always a letdown if you have to redo it again. And so, on the average, you see that technically, depending on the couples, it could be more than one round, whether you're doing IUI or IVF. And then there's surgery involved, right? So, these are things that I think should be talked about more because this is a way that you can also negotiate at work if there is some type of benefits. I have friends that are executives that have the option to have one IVF taken care of, which is can run
Mhm.
about $30,000. So, sometimes for someone that's thinking, yeah, maybe I might come across that, or I want to wait to have children, that could be an option. And then also, we live close to the border. We're in California, so
Mhm.
Mexico is not that far, and they have significantly lower prices. I mean, I saw IVFs that ran for under $5,000, great clinics, great surgeons, and doctors. And the biggest question is like, well, how can they afford to do it so low compared to here in the States? And one of the biggest things that they say is, well, most of their medical training, right, their education, their college is taken care of by the state. They're not as expensive as college tuition is here, so they don't come out of college and medical school with tons of debt, so they can afford to have work with clinics that will have a lower price range. And I ventured myself looking at different IVF procedures, and across the country, you have some states that are particularly, one, they don't allow it. That's a whole nother conversation to have. Or surrogacy is not an option as well. But one thing is that with IVF in other states, I forget what state particular. I think it was Missouri. No, yeah, St. Louis, Missouri. I think is one clinic that I found that this OBGYN, she's amazing what she wrote on her website. She's very well known, high success rate, but she had mentioned that she has the lowest in the area, Midwest area, because she wants to change the system to bringing down the cost for IVF treatments. And even though it is lower, she has to take on more patients because of it, obviously, as opposed to maybe one or two that will pay the normal price. But I think that's a conversation that we need to have in order to change legislation, and people that are not only in healthcare field and insurance, but for women and men to kind of have that conversation of like, should I save that money? Should
Yeah.
I, prepare? And I was just the other day I was watching the reel. I don't know if you ever watch it, but it cracks me up. Since they have some really great topics, and one that just was cracking me up, they were mentioning that this lady said, I don't know if they read it on Twitter or somewhere, but some lady had mentioned that she requests a deposit before she goes on a date with someone, whether she's going through an app or, an online dating service. And the reason behind it, they were trying to come up with why she does that, but they're like, so in case she stood up, that she's not, investing this money, getting her hair done or makeup, whatever, the Uber to the spot and showing up and, getting, stuck. And I'm like, interesting to have a deposit on a date, and the money would go towards somehow of the date, like it go towards a dinner or something. But I guess this must have happened more than once. And I'm like, well, it
Yeah.
makes sense if you're paying to like look nice, or maybe traveling there. Just that's a whole
Yeah,
nother
I think
thing.
it's actually hilarious though, because it's like you can get inventive, creative with how it is that you want to budget for things. I mean, it's kind of a job getting ready to go on a date. So you should be, we're joking, but I mean, that's a way to get compensated for the hours that you put in on it. But I want to touch upon something that you mentioned in terms of the cost and what this OBGYN, I believe you said, is doing.
Mhm.
Because there's so many aspects to our system where, they call it institutionalized racism or systemic racism, where think about the inequality where a couple, let's just, since we happen to be Latinos, let's just say a couple is trying to get pregnant. They would love to do IVF, but there's no way they can afford it. And they have to save and save. And the pressure, the stress that comes from all the time that you have to spend to save for that, which in the woman and the man's mind too, is that I've had friends say this. It's like those months pass by, and every month they feel like they're 1 month less towards their dream of having a child, and they're getting older. It's all this pressure that comes from it, and because it's not affordable, um some couples can only dream of ever being able to engage in IVF, and that is why they go across the border. But just as much as there are clinics that are fantastic, there's also really shady ones, even here in the United States. So it's just, there's so much pressure and so much that needs to be unveiled around this topic for couples that, if you don't have the grandparents that can afford to pay, because a lot of couples will have their parents help.
Yep.
um
They
you
see it as
know
an investment in their
yeah,
children's future.
sure.
Exactly.
But if you don't have that backing and you're trying to do it yourself, it's just a financial stress. It's like some people save up to buy a house, others save up to have a baby, you know?
Yeah. Or they get financing. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
one of I need to do more research on that as well, because I think, I mean, especially because that's all we do is talk about, financial empowerment, especially when we see, women, if they're doing this alone, or partners, right, that are going through this.
Right.
And if they're going through the financing route, right, sometimes, people mortgage their home, or they go with a clinic that has their own financial um, programs available. It's like you're putting yourself into debt to bring this child into this world, which is a really, really emotionally difficult,
Mm-hmm.
for people to start off a family. That's something that they don't want to do. And like you said, it is a great option if you have the means to do it. Option, right? If you have the means to be able to pay for IVF, IUI, whatever the procedures might be. And the difficult part is if it doesn't work, right? It's like there goes that money that you've invested, hoping that you would get a return on it, right? That the baby would come to be. And sometimes it's not. And like I was talking about my difficulties last year with my miscarriage. It's like the added on expenses afterwards. And then, you just said couples are, if they're technically you have 12 days out of the year to be able to conceive, right? So it's like every day counts.
Mm-hmm.
And as we get older, obviously the chances are much difficult risk, but kind of staying in a positive light, I've seen many women that I personally know that have gone through different routes to get financing. One, there's foundations out there that are set up for
Mm-hmm.
women to get, or in couples, excuse me, financing for their babies. So sometimes it's like 0% financing on IVF, or if you pertain to a particular religion. A friend of mine, I think she was Jewish. It was a Jewish foundation. They had IVF and I think one of the requirements was like, you're going to raise your child to be Jewish as well because you're Jewish or something, right? So there's different foundations that are set up through independent, private parties or, religions that can help assist in that. Or you just said maybe your parents or grandparents are going to put in some of that money.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if we would have this conversation early on for 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds, having that negotiation skill, maybe your work can help with that. But also you're like, well, maybe my money is not just setting aside for my nest egg, but literally for my egg. Instead of
Yeah,
having to think
exactly.
about that, right? So next time, for those that are listening, if you're in your 20s, you're like, should I freeze it? And it's, once again, the eggs, even if you freeze it, doesn't guarantee that it'll be there. But having more options, and when you have financial options, it does relieve some of that stress. And my husband and I talk about that all the time, where we're like, we have some savings. It's hard to see it deplete because we're using it, and those kind of things that you don't expect. But
Mm-hmm.
it's things that we wish we would have known or been told or educated on, and just being able to talk about it with other people. But the best resources that I've been given, and from women that have gone through the infertility route, are support groups too, hearing what other people are doing, what they've gone through,
Right.
what procedures, what doctors to stay away from, which ones are supportive, because sometimes it's not even malpractice. It's some doctors, either whether it's a female or male, don't necessarily connect with the person, and you have to feel comfortable with your doctor, right? Or sometimes they push a particular process that maybe you don't want to do, IVF, or especially if you have options to do other routes. So I think it's important to get educated on the subject, because then you feel that you have more of a choice. Because I mean, that's the hardest part when it comes to pregnancy. It's the one thing in our lives that we really can't control. We can do the best that we can, eat healthy and, be healthy and all that. But it's, at the end of the day, it's a lottery, a very slim lottery.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you said it best. So, I think this episode, on that hopeful note, if you're planning, if you're trying, we love you no matter what. People don't mean any harm by their words, I think. And, if you're just starting out, definitely, put that money in your savings account and decide, what you're going to use it for, regardless of the fact. Create a fund in general,
Yes.
for a never know fund.
If you're dating,
And
to have that
yeah,
conversation, right?
exactly. And then who knows, you might need it for your nest egg or your egg. But the point is, start saving money now, become aware now, get educated now.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm hoping that we can have one of our OBs to be able to get on this podcast to just talk about some of the things they've seen that help and work, and just
Mhm.
kind of hearing it from their side too, because there's just so much that goes on with family planning, not just your will and everything, insurance, but the actual before the family comes. So stay
Exactly.
tuned for more episodes, and best of luck for those that are out there, and let us know your fertility journey, and what worked for you, what didn't work for you, and hopefully we can help more people find most affordable ways
Yes.
of having their families, or choosing not to, which is also just as important.
Mhm. Exactly. We love you all. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, and please make sure to subscribe and leave your comments and reviews. To learn more about the podcast, check out the website and Instagram, Financially Savvy in 20 Minutes, and watch interviews on YouTube and IGTV. To become a sponsor or hire us for your next workshop or speaking engagement, please visit financiallySavvyIn20minutes.com. All it takes is 20 minutes daily to become financially savvy. Music by Nikki and produced by Robert DeLude.